الحمد لله وحده والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعد نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن اقتفى أثره واستنى بسنته إلى يوم الدين. Inshallah, we'll continue with our reading from the book entitled Sharh Usul I'tiqadi Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah, the explanation of the fundamentals of the Aqidah of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah li al-Imam Abil Qasim Hibatullah Lalaka'i rahimahullah ta'ala, who died in the year 418 after the Hijrah. And we're still in the author's introduction, and the author rahimahullah ta'ala has been speaking about recently the people of innovation and their view of the people of the Sunnah and our usul. He's been speaking about the people of innovation and how they view us, inshallah, the people of the Sunnah and our usul, and how they consider us to be blind followers, and how they consider us to be those who do nothing more than gather up statements without any understanding, and how they consider us to be those who are astray, and even worse, how they deem us to be disbelievers. And this is in spite of what they are more deserving of from astray and being closer to disbelief and being from those who blindly follow and who only gather statements. And this is because they haven't ever busied themselves with learning the religion and what it truly states and what it truly comments on and explains and clarifies and calls to. And so they seek guidance in other than it, but there is no guidance in anything other than the Quran and the Sunnah. And the guidance that might be found outside of it, if it is to be found, then it's a small portion compared to, it's a small portion that is difficult to obtain compared to the abundance that is very simply accomplished by way of the Quran and the Sunnah. The author, he talked about those things, and he's going to talk about now why they act the way they do towards the people of the Sunnah. Right? We understand that some of the aspects of why they act the way they do towards the people of the Sunnah. We understand that they act the way they do towards the people of the Sunnah because of their devaluation of the Quran and the Sunnah, as we talked about before. How they don't value the Quran and they don't value the Sunnah. And so that's one of the reasons they look down upon the people of the Sunnah and accuse them with these false accusations and attack them with these slanderous statements. One of the reasons they have this disposition is because of their devaluing of the Quran and the Sunnah. Another reason why you might see them having such a position or view of the people and the Sunnah is what the author is going to mention now when he says, إذ فخره على مخالفيه بحذقه واستخراج مذاهبه بعقله وفكره من الدقائق وأنه لم يسبقه إلى بدعته إلا منافق مارق أو معاند للشريعة مشاقق فليس بحقيق من هذه أصوله أن يعيب على من تقلد كتاب الله وسنة رسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم واقتدى بهما وأذعن لهما واستسلم لأحكامهما ولم يعترض عليهما بظن أو تخرص أو استحالة أو يطعن عليه. Now, he says, and like we said, this is commenting on why they have the stance that they have towards the people of the Sunnah. He says that إِذْ فَخْرُهُ عَلَى مُخَالِفِيهِ بِهِذْقِهِ, that their fakhr, the way that they build themselves up, is by looking down on others. And they do this by way of their cleverness. Right? They use what they consider to be their cleverness as a way to devalue others and build themselves up. So he says, إِذْ فَخْرُهُ عَلَى مُخَالِفِيهِ بِهِذْقِهِ, that their pride or their excelling over others is based on what their prideful advancement over their opponents is based on what they can show from their cleverness. And this is something, right? They can't, their value can't be seen if all of us are equal in the information and the ability thereof. Meaning, if all of us were to follow the Quran and the Sunnah, then all of us have the same ability to get the information. And the religion of the Salafi, it's not in newness. Instead, our religion is a religion that it adopts the way of the old. And that's what it means to be Salafi. We don't look to be the first one to say something or the first one to have a position on something. Instead, our elevation and our advancement as individuals is in how much we do like they did. And so like this, everybody has the ability to excel in this and be on a similar playing field, because my advancement is something that has already been accomplished, meaning the way that I advance has already been done. So all I have to do is copy. To be Salafi, all you have to do is copy Abu Bakr, copy Umar, copy Uthman. Before that, copy the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so our advancement, the way we excel and the way we show out and show off how advanced we are is by how much we resemble those who are before us. And that is something that everyone can do. There's no medium that allows us to show off if all of us are copying the people that came before us. But these individuals, their advancement, their excellence over their opponent, the way that they show off in front of their opponent and show their advancement and their excellence over their opponent, is by way of what they consider to be their cleverness. And what is their hifq? How much can they bring new and improvise and create and, make what wasn't available and things of this nature. And so that's one of the reasons they devalue the people of the Sunnah, because the person of the Sunnah just wants to be like the Salaf. His ultimate desire is to be like those individuals, yani al-Rakab, that has already passed by, the caravan that has already left. He just wants to be like those people, because those are a group of people, radiyallahu anhum wa radu an, that Allah has been pleased with, and they've been pleased with him. And the results always match the cause, or should we say the effects always match the cause, and the results always match the effort or the work put in. And so the results that those people got was based on their work, and the effect that was for them was based on the causes that they initiated. And so for the person of the Sunnah, we just want to be like them. And so there's no need for us to be, quote unquote, extremely clever by or creative or artistic in how we approach this religion. It's simple. Ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, he used to say, al-ilmu wal-iman makanahuma, man ibtaghahuma wajadahuma. Knowledge and faith are in their location. They're at their place. Whoever seeks them finds them. And so it shows us that the knowledge that we need and the faith that we need to excel and be excellent, it's not new. It's not something that we have to creatively come up with. It's just there. All you have to do is go get it. But these individuals, that's to them why they criticize us, because their excellence is by what they could creatively come up with, what they could, quote unquote, figure out that no one else did. And so he says that their pride or their excellence or their boasting up of themselves and their lowering of others, their fakhr, is over their opponents is by way of their cleverness. The way that they show off over their opponents and show their excellence over their opponents is by displaying their cleverness, how creative they are. واستخراج مذاهبه بعقله وفكره من الدقائق. He says, as well as their ability to extract their ideologies or their madhahib, their ways of thinking, using their intellect and their thoughts. And how would I translate this? استخراج مذاهبه بعقله وفكره من الدقائق. Their excellence is shown as well over their opponent, meaning the ways that they see themselves as being, the way they see themselves as excelling, he says, is based on their ability to extract their ideology from the finer details using their intellect and their insight. Their ability to extract their ideology from the fine details using their intellect and their insight. So the ways that they show their excellence is to take an evidence or a subtle matter and use their intellect and their intelligence and their insight to produce and make up their ideologies, their madhahib, their ways of thinking. And this is how they show that they're excellent and superior. And so, as we said, the person of the Sunnah, if you ask us, where is Allah? It doesn't take us a lot of thinking. It doesn't take us a lot of effort. It doesn't take us trying to figure things out. We just say, Ar-Rahmanu ala al-arsh istawa. The most merciful above his throne, he ascended. وَهُوَ الْقَاهِرُ مِنْ فَوْقِ عِبَادِهِ. He's the one who is, he is the compeller or the one who has strength and dominance from above his slaves. Like he's above his slaves. And we understand that Allah sends things down, so he is above. إِلَيْهِ يَسْعَدُ الْكَلِمُ الطَّيِّبُ وَالْعَمَلُ الصَّالِحِ. And like this, for us, the religion is simple. And there's no ability, quote unquote, for us to show off in doing that. It's just Allah said, we said. That's it. And so how can you tell the clever one of us from the less clever? My aqidah is the same aqidah as the old woman from Naysabur. My aqidah is the same aqidah. My belief, my fundamentals, the way I worship Allah is the same as the old woman in Naysabur, previously, right? So the old woman in myself, the old woman who can't read and write and never been to and has never been to university, and myself, we believe the same aqidah. Allah is above, Allah has a hand, Allah comes down to the closest sky when the last third of the night remains. Allah is Ar-Rahman, Allah loves, Allah hates, Allah speaks, Allah sees, Allah hears. We have the same aqidah. How can I show off that I am above the older lady and I am educated and I have this documentation and this tazkiyah, etc., when our religion is the same source and all of it's clear. So for them, their excellence, their pride, the thing that makes them feel good about themselves is their ability to extract their ideologies, their false understandings and mistaken belief from those subtle things, those fine details, by working their mind extra and by using what they consider to be insight. An example of this is, if I'm not mistaken, it's Al-Jubba'i, the individual who came up with it. Right now it's escaping me. I know Ibn al-Qayyim, he mentions it in his Alfiyah and in other places. When he came up with his proof that Allah is everywhere and or is not above his throne, and he mentioned it to his students, and he said he was finally so excited to have this evidence that he had to show that Allah is not above his throne. And out of his excitement, and he was prideful, he felt like, I've done it, I'm the one who was able to accomplish this thing that so many others have struggled in doing. and he told his students he would not tell it to them except if they paid him, right? And so they paid him, and his argument was that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, I'm trying to remember the actual wordage of the narration, the gist of which, I apologize. Like I said, your brother is weaker in memory. This is why we try to narrate from books most of the time. But the gist of the story is that he said, the hadith, that none of you should prefer me over the noon. None of you should prefer, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, none of you should prefer me over any other, over the noon, over Yunus alayhi salatu wassalam. Right? Meaning, don't try to separate between the prophets. Don't make one better than the other in the way that you reduce the other. But he took this statement to mean, why did the prophet say that? And this individual, his reasoning for saying why the prophet said it, he said, this is because the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he did Mi'raj. He went and did the Mi'raj, which is the ascension to the highest sky, as we know as the people of the Sunnah, where he spoke with Allah and met his Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala. But in the narration, he says, don't prefer me over the noon. This innovator, or this person of innovation, he said, where was the noon at? Where was he located? He was located in the belly of the whale. فَالْتَقَمَهُ الْحُوتِ. Right? So the whale swallowed him. And so he says, so you have the Prophet ﷺ above the seven skies, and Yunus in the belly of the whale, and the Prophet said, don't prefer me over him, because, meaning where he is and where I am are the same with regards to being close to Allah, i.e. that Allah is not above his arsh. Allah, you don't ascend to him, you don't go up to him. Me and the noon are in the same location, and like this, he felt he accomplished that which no one was able to accomplish, and brought a proof to prove that Allah isn't above his throne. And so you see that the way that they build themselves up is by their ability, what they think, to extract their false ideology from these subtle arguments, these subtle details, by way of their intellect and their constant thinking and insight. When the reality is that this argument is wrong to begin with. And Allah says he is above. وَهُوَ فِي السَّمَاءِ إِلَهٌ. Right? The point of it is that this is what the author is saying, that the way that they build themselves up and the way that they show their superiority over their opponent is by way of their cleverness and their ability to extract their false ideologies from the detail, or from the fine details, using their intellect and insight. He goes on to say, وَأَنَّهُ لَمْ يَسْبِقْهُ إِلَى بِدْعَتِهِ إِلَّا مُنَافِقٌ مَارِقٌ. And no one has preceded them in their innovation other than a munafiq mariq. No one has preceded them in their innovation other than hypocrites who have shot out of the religion. Meaning, this thing that they thought that they were coming up with, if they came up with it, then that is a problem. And if they didn't come up with it, the problem is even worse. What does this mean? If they came up with their innovation, then this is a problem. Because for us, as we mentioned, Ahl Sunnah, ours is a tamassuk upon the Quran, the Sunnah, the Sahaba, the way of the Salaf. Right? And dying upon that. But for them, their fundamental, or their foundation, is to invent, to produce new. So if they innovated, then that's a problem, because knowledge and faith already exist. الْيَوْمُ أَكْمَلْتُ لَكُمْ دِينَكُمْ. Right? The religion was complete. And so if they were the first to invent it, then it is a problem, because nobody else did it before them. طيب. If they weren't the first to invent it, if the things that they say from their false ideologies, they weren't the first ones to say them, right? Maybe like we talked about the Mu'tazila. Maybe this Mu'tazili individual, who I forgot his name, but I believe it's Jubai, Maybe he wasn't the first one to say that Allah isn't above his throne. He just feels that he was the first one to bring some evidence for it that's stronger than the others. But the fact that he wasn't the first one to say فَهَذَا بَلِيَّةٌ أُخْرَى, then this is another problem. Because who preceded them in that? Right? If they invented it, then that is a problem. If they didn't invent it, then that's an even bigger problem. Because who preceded them in what they say? It wasn't Abu Bakr. It wasn't Umar, Uthman, Ali. It wasn't the messenger, let alone. And it wasn't any of the Sahaba or the Salaf al-Salih. Who preceded them in what they've said? If they weren't the ones to invent it, no one has preceded them in that, in their innovation, other than a munafiq mariq, other than a hypocrite who shot out of the religion. Like Abdullah ibn Saba, right? The one who was the founder of the Shia, as well as the Khawarij, right? Or had a role in the Khawarij of his time, right? Nobody preceded them in their innovation other than a munafiq mariq. And so this phrase, if they are the ones who invented it, then that's a problem. And if they aren't the ones who innovated it, then the problem is even bigger. Because their Salaf are hypocrites who have shot out the religion. Right? Wasil ibn Ata. Right? These type of individuals. Jahm ibn Safwan. Right? Who got it from Ja'd ibn Dirham. Who got it from Aban. Who got it from Talut. Who got it from Labid. Right? So the point of it is that nobody has preceded them in their innovation other than a hypocrite who was shot out of the religion. أو معاند للشريعة مشاقق, or somebody who openly opposes the religion and separates himself from it. Meaning sometimes the people that preceded them were hypocrites who actually leave out of the religion, right? Like Abdullah bin Saba, he claimed to be a Muslim and claimed to show love to the family of the Prophet, only to be one of the founding hands in the Shia. And then after that, he had a large hand in going against Ali and trying to kill Ali and other than them. And if their founders aren't hypocrites who claim to be part of the religion to destroy it from the inside, then it's even worse. Their founders and their predecessors are mu'anidun lish-sharia mushaqiq, those who opposed openly the Sharia, the religion of the Prophet ﷺ, and were against it, were in a different plane altogether, who separated themselves from it. Like we talked about the people that founded the statement of Ja'd ibn Dirham, how he got it from Aban, and Aban got it from Talut, who was the nephew of the magician, the Jew, Labid ibn Asam, who did magic on the Prophet ﷺ. This is where this foundation of Jahmiyyah, the Tajahum, this is their isnad, right? One of the claims about their isnad. So the point of it is that either they have a hypocrite as their founder, either they're the founder and that's a problem, right? They're the first ones to make it up. Or there was a hypocrite who innovated it. Or even worse, there was somebody who openly opposed the religion, a kafir who was out in the open with his kufr, that they have adopted these statements from. They've adopted the statements of Aristotle. They have adopted the statements of the Saba'iyyah, right? And so like this is their isnad, as Ibn Taymiyyah talks about in other places. When you look at their isnad back to their innovation, we see what it is. When, as we said, you go back to Ahl Sunnah, our chain is like, it's basic. It's simple. Allah said, the Messenger said, the Sahaba said, they the people who knew best, right? They're the people who knew best. But for them, their ability to excel over their opponents and be superior over their opponents is only shown through their ability to display their cleverness and their ability to display their cleverness in extracting their false ideologies from those subtle matters using their intellect and their insight. Although their innovation, they've never been preceded in the statement that they've come up with by anyone other than a hypocrite who has left the religion or a person who openly opposed the religion to begin with. And so like this, if they made it up, then it's a problem. And if not, then the problem's even worse. And even worse. Al-Lalaka'i rahimahullah ta'ala, he goes on, he says, فَلَيْسَ بِحَقِيقٍ مَنْ هَذِهِ أُصُولُهُ أَنْ يُعِيبَ عَلَى مَنْ تَقَلَّدَ كِتَابَ اللَّهِ وَسُنَّةَ رَسُولِهِ. He says, so it's not suitable for the person that these are his fundamentals. Right? His fundamentals aren't Quran, Sunnah, Sahaba, way of the Salaf, hold fast on it until death, avoid innovation, and don't lend its people your ear, right? Don't even listen to it. That's not their usul. That's not their foundation. Their foundation is, and he's going to talk about it again, but we can mention some of them here. Experience, their personal experiences, their personal preferences, right? الذوق والتجرب, right? والعقل, their intellect, right? Experience, personal preferences, intellect, and the blindly following of their predecessors. These are some of their fundamentals that they hold on to. When you tell them to follow the Quran and the Sunnah, they say, I prefer. You know, the way that I enjoy worshiping Allah this way. And I feel it in my heart. That's the dhawq, like the Sufiya, right? The worship really affects me when I do it this way more than when I do it like you guys. Their tajriba, right? Their experiences. Well, you know, I've seen that this act of worship really works more than what you guys are calling me to. This, in my experience, is what the people have been doing. Or my experience is what has been successful. Like when you talk about going against the rulers. Well, in our experience, you want change, you have to force it upon the rulers. So we say, no, that's not the religion. The religion is not what you've experienced. The religion is what it is. It's not your personal preference, right? It's not your intellect. When you tell them follow the Quran and the Sunnah, they say, but what about this? It doesn't make sense. Right? Are you telling me that Allah comes down to the lowest sky to the closest sky at the last third of every night? Well, then he's always down. It doesn't make sense that he comes down if it's always. The religion is not about it matching your intellect. Right? Because your intellect can be deficient. You can only comprehend certain things. And likewise, it's not who you blind follow and place into roles of leadership. When you tell them to do it this way or that way, according to the Quran and the Sunnah, they say our parents, our elders, our leaders, right? Well, Aristotle, like these are their usul that they build off of. So he says it's not suitable for the person that these are his usul. These are his fundamentals that he criticized the person who taqallada, who yani yokes himself to the book of Allah and the Sunnah, right? The thing that yani taqalladnahu, and like the word we translated is blind following, but a taqallud is to yoke yourself or to chain yourself to, right? That which we chain ourselves to and that which we are yoked on and like we're pulled and drawn by it, whichever way they go, we go. That which we that which we have adorned ourselves and adopted for ourselves and follow behind its lead is the book of Allah and the Sunnah of the Messenger. So he says it's not suitable for the one, talking about the innovator, it's not suitable for the one who this is his fundamentals or who these are his fundamentals that he criticized the person who adopts the book of Allah and the Sunnah of his Messenger and follows the two of them. How can you blame me for following the Quran and the Sunnah when these are what you follow? Have you not seen the one who takes his desires as his God that he worships? Right? Your experiences are limited. Why would I take your experience? It's like a phrase that we often say. It's like a broke person giving you advice on how to save money or how to strike it rich. Right? How can you advise me based on your experiences? You've never succeeded. Why would I listen to you? So why would I listen to your desires? Why would I listen to your experience? Why would I let my intellect that is deficient and established in its deficiency? There is no argument that the intellect of every individual is deficient in some way. Why would I let that intellect be my leader over the book of Allah and the Sunnah of his messenger? Why would I let the people before me, who, when I look at their results, don't compare to the results that were for those who followed the book of Allah and the Sunnah of his messenger? Why would I listen to the philosophy of a star worshiper like Aristotle, who worshiped multiple deities? Why would I listen to his philosophy? Your intelligence couldn't get you to Tawheed. Why would I listen to you and assume that your intelligence is the intelligence by which I need to weigh the realities of things? Why would I listen to the intelligence of these philosophers who engaged in all types of indecency when their intelligence couldn't save them from the indecency that they engaged in? Why would I take as a leader the intelligence or these examples of the philosophers and the theologians who most of them died in confusion? Why would I take them as my leader when I have the book of Allah and I have the Sunnah, the book of Allah, الَّذِي لَا يَأْتِيهِ الْبَاطِلُ مِنْ بَيْنِ يَدَيْهِ وَلَا مِنْ خَلْفِهِ, the book of Allah where no falsehood approaches it from behind it nor in front of it. From in front of it nor behind it. And the Sunnah of the Messenger that Allah Azza wa Jal told us he doesn't speak on desire. It's nothing more than revelation revealed to him. And so this is why they don't have the right to criticize us. He says the person of the Sunnah, they don't have the right to criticize them, that person who adopts the book of Allah and the Sunnah of his messenger and follows the two of them, وَأَذْعَنَ لَهُمَا, and submits to the two of them. And this is important, right? And it's kind of like he's telling you the stages or the steps of how your approach, O Salafi, should be to the book of Allah. You have to adopt it, you have to follow it, and you have to submit. وَمَا أَشْبَهُ ذَلِكَ بِقَوْلِ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى فَلَا وَرَبِّكَ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ حَتَّى يُحَكِّمُوكَ فِي مَا شَجَرَ بَيْنَهُمْ ثُمَّ لَا يَجِدُوا فِي أَنفُسِهِمْ حَرَجًا مِمَّا قَضَيْتَ وَيُسَلِّمُوا تَسْلِيمًا. You have to adopt it. You have to set it up as the judge. And then you have to have no problems with its judgment. You have to follow it. And you have to submit. Or you have to allow it to be your leader. And then you have to submit. And so he's saying, وَاسْتَسْلَمَ لِأَحْكَامِهِمَا. They submit to it, or they obey it and submit to its judgments. وَلَمْ يَعْتَرِضْ عَلَيْهِمَا بِظَنٍ. And he doesn't, the person of the Sunnah, that they don't have the right to criticize, he doesn't oppose it, or he doesn't combat it, and he doesn't oppose it with his own conjecture, or with his own guesses, or with istihala, with his negating it by deeming it impossible. So how could that person, the innovator, criticize this type of person? Let's read that paragraph again without the explanation, and hopefully it'll make more sense and come across clearer. He's talking about, once again, the reason why the innovator belittles the person of the Sunnah and their fundamentals and criticizes us. He says this is because their superiority over their opponents is shown through their cleverness and their ability to extract their ideologies from the subtle affairs using their intellect and their insight. Although no one has preceded them in their innovation, or to this innovation, to his innovation, no one has preceded them to their innovation other than a hypocrite who has shot out of the religion, or an open opposer to the Sharia who has separated himself. So it is not suitable that the individual who these are his fundamentals, it is not suitable that he criticize the one who has adopted the book of Allah and the sunnah of the messenger and has chosen to be led by them, or has followed the two of them, the book of Allah and the sunnah of the messenger, and obeyed them and submitted to their judgments, and has not opposed the two of them with his own conjecture or assumptions and guesses, or deeming impossible. And here, there's in my footnotes, one of our teachers said that there's a word missing, oh, and yut'ana fi, oh, and yut'ana alay. Nor has he criticized the two of them. But in the text it says, you could read it as, so how could this person criticize that person? Either way, the point of it is that this is what the author is saying. He is saying that these people, and this is just to summarize again, he is saying that these people, and when you look at it, wallahi, I mean, I'm sorry, I know sometimes this can be repetitive, but it's so it can stick into my head and stick into yours as well. The person of the sunnah doesn't show off his excellence by being new, by being quote unquote creative. The person of the sunnah shows off his excellence by conforming to the ways of the old. But the person of innovation, since conforming is something that everybody is able to do equally and almost as easily, right? The conforming is the easy part. The thing that becomes hard is the knowledge of what to conform to. And that is where our superiority is shown. Meaning the Salafi, his superiority is shown in knowledge of what to conform to and the amount of his conforming. But the act of conforming is something that all of us share. And we all, once I know something, I can do it. And so there's no way to show superiority between us in that fashion. Just like the Iman is something that nobody else can see. So me conforming in this issue might garner me a greater superiority with Allah because of the sincerity in my conforming, right? I want to say confirmation, but it's not. Confirmation is different. In my conforming, my sincerity might be greater, and thus my superiority is greater. But there's no way for that to show off because all of us can conform. And so for them, how do they show their superiority? They show their superiority by displaying their creativity, their cleverness, their ability to produce and explain these falsehoods. And this is something that you'll see the more we cover some of the false statements that they make. You'll see that the person who is fitra is salim, the person who has a sound natural disposition and belief, a lot of their statements won't make any sense. And you'll be like, what are they saying? It doesn't make any sense. And so for them, their superiority is their ability to explain what didn't make sense with their cleverness and their ability to extract from these subtle and detailed matters evidence that supports their false ideology that they're able to extract it with their quote unquote advanced intellects and their deep insight. This is how they show off. And so that's what causes them to criticize us, because they think they're smarter. And they say it. The way of the Salaf is safer, but the way of the later generation is more knowledgeable and more detailed and precise. But the fact of the matter is, no one has preceded them in their innovation. They're the first ones to introduce it. And if they were preceded, then the only ones who preceded them, if their affair was explaining and not inventing, then the statements of those that they are explaining aren't the statements of Allah and the statements of the Messenger and the statements of the Sahaba, but instead they are the statements of hypocrites who have shot out of the religion, or disbelievers who openly oppose religion, the way of the Prophet ﷺ. And so their fundamentals of personal preference, experience, advancing the intellect over the text, and following those who don't deserve to be followed, their fundamentals doesn't give them the right to criticize us for how we approach the religion with our fundamentals. Because our fundamentals are Quran, Sunnah, way of the Sahaba, the consensus of the Salaf, hold on to it until death, avoid innovation in its people. And so they don't have the right to criticize us, because all we've done is found what Allah said, found what the Messenger said, adopted that. Whenever they argue with you, oh Salafi, how can you say Allah is above the throne? We say Allah said it. You got a problem with it? Take it up with Allah. You can't argue with me. You can't win the argument, because the statement is the statement of Allah. And that's why for us, the people of the Sunnah, we constantly advance ourselves in knowledge of what Allah said, because you can't beat Allah in the argument. You can't outmatch him in cleverness and in intellect, or in knowledge, should we say. Right? And so when you ask me, where do you get off saying Allah has a hand? Because Allah said so. Well, how can you believe? Because Allah said so, because the Prophet said so. This is the way the Salaf understood it. And so for us, they can't criticize us, because all we've done is adopted the statements of Allah and his Messenger. We've taken them as our own, and we follow them, right? We follow them in the aspect of how gathering them up, we follow behind them to gather them all up. And then once we gather them, we put them in front of us and follow that path. So we follow up behind them as well as follow behind them. He says, and we submit, or we apply them, right? We apply these statements and we submit to the judgments of them. And we don't combat them and oppose them with our own conjecture and with our own assumptions, right? The people of innovation, they compare Allah to his creation and then they negate. And that's why they negate so many things. Because before they negated, they said, well, Allah must be like me. Why do they negate the hand of Allah? Because the first thing they do is say, the hand is like my hand and Allah's hand is not like my hand. But we, the people of the Sunnah, we affirm first and then negate. And we don't compare Allah. We don't compare Allah when we affirm. So there's no reason to negate the existence of the quality, because we never compared it to us to begin with. Hashalillah that his hand would be like mine. How could his hand be like mine? He has a hand because he said he has a hand, but I never once thought his hand was like mine. And if you're saying his hand is like mine, then that's what I'm going to negate. But I'm not going to negate what he told me about himself, because he knows better. So why would I negate it and combat it and oppose it with my own conjecture and with my own assumptions, my foolish assumptions and guesses? And how could I deem it to be impossible when he said it? Right? And my intellect can't comprehend his reality. Nor am I qualified to criticize what Allah has said about himself. So this is that paragraph, and I know we're moving very slowly in this book, but as I said, the introduction is super beneficial, and this is more for me than anybody else. So, سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.